Hare Krishna. We welcome all of our YouTube Live listeners and our listeners over Facebook Live. Welcome to all of you to this session on Sri Bhagavatamrita. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Pankajanabhaya Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangraye Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas Tathama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachidupasana Vrajavadhu Vargena Vakalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanamamalam Prema Pumartho Mahan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhormatamidam Tatra Dharana Paraha Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Radhanatha Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Jayapataka Swami Niti Namine Nama Acharya Padaya Nitai Kripa Pradayine Gaura Katha Dhamadaya Nagara Grama Dharine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangulangayate girim Yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurung Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. We welcome all of our YouTube Live listeners and our listeners over Facebook Live. Welcome to all of you to this session 95 of Sri Bhagavatamrita. So before we proceed to today's session, we would like to congratulate the devotees who participated in the quiz session from yesterday. From Facebook, we'd like to congratulate Ranjani Gopika Mataji and Ananga Mohini Gopika. And from YouTube, we'd like to congratulate Aditi and Hari Krishna Maddali Prabhu. Congratulations to all of you for participating in this quiz session. So today, in today's session, we would like to cover two chapters, chapter 20 and chapter 21. from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this chapter 20 is entitled, it is in continuation of the Uddhava Gita, that Krishna is speaking transcendental instructions to Sri Uddhava. So this is chapter 20, which is entitled Pure Devotional Service Surpasses Knowledge and Detachment. Text 1. Sri Uddhava said, "My dear lotus-eyed Krishna, you are the Supreme Lord, and thus the Vedic literatures consisting of positive and negative injunction constitute your order. Such literatures focus upon the good and bad qualities of work." Now, Uddhava here is telling that Vedic, Vedas, they give, a wide variety which has, good and bad, reactions of good and bad. So now what is Uddhava's question? So Uddhava is asking that, my dear Lord, the distinction observed between pious activity, and sinful activity comes from your own Vedic knowledge and does not arise by itself. So if the same Vedic literature subsequently nullifies such distinction between pious and sin, there will certainly be confusion, Uddhava says. So to this, Krishna responds by saying, my dear Uddhava, because I desire that human beings achieve perfection, I have presented three paths of advancement: the path of knowledge, the path of work, and the path of devotion. So, jnana, karma, and bhakti. So, besides these three, there is absolutely no other means of elevation. Then, what does Krishna say? So, Krishna says in the Vedas there are these three paths: jnana, jnana, karma, and bhakti. So, text 7, Krishna says that among these three paths, Jnana Yoga, the path of philosophical speculation, is recommended for those who are disgusted with material life and are detached from ordinary fruitive activities. Those who are not disgusted with material life yet, having many desires yet to fulfill, should seek perfection through the path of Karma Yoga. So Krishna knows very well that there are people of different categories, different desires. Just like the, father of a few children, he knows the propensities of his own children. That some of the children will have attachment to just keep playing all day. Whatever be the situation, they just want to play. Some children, the father knows that they will be lazy. They are that kind of nature. And some of the children, they are very, very anxious and eager to help with the father's mission. Very few are like that. So Krishna is saying that there are some people in this world who, they're disgusted with material life. And because they've become detached from fruitive reactions of material life, they pursue jnana. That why? Why is this happening? Why is that? They are inquisitive. So there's one that category. So that is there in the Vedas, how to, cater to this particular category of people. And then Krishna says, but there are some who are still having ample amount of material desires to satisfy. They are not yet disgusted with material life. So therefore they seek the path of Karma Yoga. Then Krishna says, text 8, Krishna says, if somehow or other, by good fortune, one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, such a person, being neither disgusted with nor very much attached to material life, should achieve perfection through the path of loving devotion unto me. So this is the path for Bhakti Yoga. That somehow or other, by good fortune, Krishna says, this is something that we need to understand, that, Krishna is saying here that somehow or other, it's not by accident. Somehow or other. How does, a person, Brahmanda Brahmite kono bhagyavan jeev, Guru Krishna prasade pai, bhakti lata bij. That in this Brahmanda, traversing it millions and millions and millions of times, due to some good fortune, they come across some devotees and they attain the supreme mercy of Guru and Krishna in that way. Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Beej. The Bhakti Lata, the seed of devotion, is thus planted in their heart. So that's exactly what Krishna is saying here in text 8. Then Krishna continues to say that as long as one is not is not satiated by fruitive activity and has not awakened his state for devotional service by Shravanam Kirtanam and by Vishnu Smaranam, one has to act according to regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions. So Krishna is saying that yes, if you are not able to yet come to the platform of rendering spontaneous devotion to Krishna, spontaneous devotion to me, Krishna is saying, then there are regulative principles which are enjoined in the Vedic scriptures which they need to follow so that they can start rendering pure devotional service. Krishna continues to say that, my dear Uddhava, a person who is situated in his prescribed duty, properly worshipping by Vedic sacrifices, but not desiring the fruitive result of such worship, will not go to heavenly planets. Similarly, by not performing forbidden activities, he will not go to hell. So Krishna is saying that even by doing devotional service unto me, if someone is having material desires, that can also happen. Like, say, for example, we are chanting Hare Krishna, but we want to enjoy in this material world. We are attached to enjoying in this world. Then we are elevated to the heavenly planets. Actually, Krishna is very happy. Krishna tells to Narad Muni that someone who desires bhakti means material enjoyment. Someone who desires mukti, liberation, I give that to them very easily, Krishna says. But someone who desires bhakti, then I test them. Because giving bhakti means giving myself. Just like how we heard on the Janmashtami day, in the super excellent pastimes, nectarian pastimes of Krishna, that how Krishna wanted to give return gift for all the beautiful gifts that everyone was offering to Krishna. Krishna said that the best gift that I can give you for what you are giving me is I can give you myself. And Krishna was hugging everyone and was telling them, I am yours, I am yours. Krishna is giving himself to such devotees. That is the level of perfection. Because Krishna can give bhakti very easily. Krishna gives mukti very easily, but he does not give bhakti so easily. Giving bhakti means giving himself. So Krishna says, one should never lose sight of the actual goal of mental activities, but rather conquering the life, air, and senses and utilizing their intelligence. Strengthened by the mode of goodness, one should bring the mind under the control of the spirit soul of the self. Krishna is saying here in one verse what Krishna explained to Arjuna about the controlling of the mind. Krishna here is explaining that to Uddhava in one verse. How Krishna in Bhagavad Gita explains it over, almost an entire chapter. Here, Krishna is just saying it in one verse, that just controlling the mind. We have to do that. And then he explains that just like an expert horseman desiring to tame a headstrong horse, first lets the horse have his way for a moment, and then pulling the reins gradually places the horse on the desired path. Similarly, the supreme yoga process is that by which one carefully observes the movements and desires of the mind and gradually brings the mind under their control. So beautiful example given by Krishna himself in this text 21 of this horse. So Krishna is saying we should know what the capabilities of the mind are. In order to control certain thing, we need to know how far this certain thing can go. Only then we know, okay, this is the limit of our own mind. Everyone's mind is different. Everyone's mind reacts differently, desires differently, thinks differently, responds differently. So to understand how far the mind can really go, is one of the tactics, is the first step, in fact, in controlling the mind. Very beautiful example. So when I was reading this, I was reminded of a very beautiful story. There was once a person who came across a mystical horse, a very mystical, a magical horse. Why was it magical? The person who was having the horse, who wanted to sell the horse, he said that this horse is very magical. Why? Because if you want the horse to move ahead, you say, God is great. When you want the horse to stop, you say, God is great. And when you want the horse to move ahead, you say, thank God. So how to make the horse go ahead? The horse was trained in this way by the person. And he said the way you make the horse move ahead is when you say, thank God. When you say, thank God, it starts moving. And when you say, if you want it to stop, then you say, God is great. And the horse will immediately stop. So this man who came to see this horse, he was saying, wow, this is a very spiritual horse. It'll keep me really, focused on God. So, okay, I will buy this horse. And he said, yes, have fun with the horse. So he took the horse, he sat on the horse. And then he said, how would the horse move ahead? If he says, thank God. So he said, thank God. And then the horse started moving and he was enjoying his ride. He was going in the valley, in the mountains. He was going, driving. The horse was galloping. They were all going in the nicely, the man was enjoying his new horse ride. But then slowly, suddenly, he just came upon a, like a slopey mountain, which was culminating into a cliff. So then he was, seeing that the horse is still galloping in full speed. And he was saying, stop, slow down. And the horse was not slowing down because those were not the magical words to stop the horse. And in that moment, the man really forgot what was the magical word to stop the horse from moving ahead, to stop the horse. So the man was really in anxiety. Oh, the cliff is coming. He's going to fall off the cliff. And at that moment, somehow or the other, he remembered, oh, yes, the way to stop the horse is to say, God is great. So he just shouted out, God is great. And immediately the horse stopped. Right at the brim of the cliff. The man is seeing that there's a huge, valley underneath. So just at the brim of that, the horse stopped. As soon as he said, God is great, the horse stopped. Then the man said, thank God. And then again, the horse fell down. So this is what happens when we have an uncontrolled mind. The uncontrolled mind is just like this magical horse. We have trained the mind over millions and millions of, lifetimes. That, this taste of food, the vision of something very desirable, the sound of some music, all of this way our senses, our mind is trained to just enjoy separately from Krishna. That is how the mind is being trained. But now for us to now practice, to erase all of those trainings and to bring in this kind of, a revolutionary kind of a teaching to the mind in order to control the mind, in order to make the mind our best friend. That requires patience, that requires training, and that requires following the process. Simple. As long as we follow the process, as long as we are training ourselves to do that, to get out of our previous conditioning, then it's very easy for us to control the mind. So this is exactly what Krishna is saying. Then Krishna goes on to explain that when an intelligent person engages constantly in worshipping me through devotional service as described by me, his heart becomes firmly situated in me. Thus, all desires, material desires in the heart, are completely destroyed by my mercy. So this is showing that anyone who starts in the process of Krishna consciousness, we may not even achieve the perfected stage yet. But Krishna is saying that at least when an intelligent person, a sumedha, yajantihi sumedhasa, who engage in devotional service, who participate in the Sankirtan mission of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, is intelligent people. Yajantihi sumedhasa. So when by engaging, constantly engaging in worshipping me, which is described by me, and who is following this process, material desires of the heart are completely destroyed by me, Krishna is saying. That is why Srila Prabhupada called our International Society for Krishna Consciousness like a hospital, Prabhupada said. That in ISKCON, there are devotees, souls, living entities, who are in various stages of purification. As long as they are chanting Hare Krishna, as long as they are, in the process, they are staying in the movement, taking shelter of Krishna, then even chronic diseases, even so-called diseases which seem unsurmountable, such diseases also can be cured. That is the assurance by Srila Prabhupada. As long as they are sincere in taking the medicine, and they are sincere in taking the diet. What is the medicine? The medicine is chanting 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the medicine that has been prescribed to us. So as long as one is chanting 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day, and what is the diet that has been prescribed for us? Krishna Prasad. So when people ask us that, oh, are you vegetarians? We say, no. We are not vegetarians. We are Krishnatarians. We eat food that is first offered to Krishna. And then when Krishna makes it pure prasad, by taking that food which has been first sanctified by the Lord, then we get touched by that same spirituality. So this is the medicine and the diet. So as long as one is taking these two, there's a very good chance that we will get rid of all our material diseases. And Krishna says, the knot in the heart is pierced, all misgivings are cut to pieces, and the chain of fruitive actions is terminated when I am seen as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna concludes to say that it is said that complete detachment is the highest stage of freedom. Therefore, one who has no personal desire, does not pursue personal rewards, can only achieve pure devotional service unto me. So Krishna is saying that when we have our desires which are matching with Krishna, which are in alignment with Krishna's, then that is pure devotional service. But what is the way that, is there no way that if we are not at that level, then is there no hope for us? No, there is. Because as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam in the second canto, third chapter, text 10, it's stated, Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. That a person who has broad intelligence, even if they are full of material desires, akama, if they have no material desires, akama, sarva kamova means, or if they have full material desires, or moksha kama udaradhi, or if they have the desire for liberation, all these scenarios, they must worship and engage in the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And thus, they will gradually become purified of all these desires. And then, what Krishna is saying here in this concluding verse of this chapter, then that person, by following this, that even if we are full of desires, even if we have any kind of, we just approach Krishna, we tell him that, my dear Krishna, I have these desires. I have these kind of things that are troubling me. Please help me. When we are truthful in this way to Guru and Krishna, then they help us in going from this level to that level. We make advancement. because Krishna takes us to that level when we are sincere about our own, to accept what anarthas we have, to accept the level of impurities that are there in our heart. And this process of chanting the holy names is, as Mahaprabhu describes in the first verse of the Shikshashtakam, Chetodarpanamarjanam bhavamaha Davagninir Vapanam Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. Just by the process of Krishna Sankirtan, by the chanting of the holy names, the mirror, the polluted mirror of our heart, which is having the dust is collected in our mirror of our hearts from not only this lifetime, but from millions and millions of lifetimes. All that cobwebs, all that dust can be removed immediately. And Cheto Darpanam Archanam. Our darpana will be cleansed. The mirror of our heart, the mirror of our mind will become cleansed by simply participating in the Sankirtan mission of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, by chanting the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena. So whatever our situation is, if we just engage in, in the process of devotional service to Krishna, Krishna will gradually give us elevation. He'll award elevation to us, So in this way, we end this chapter 20. This brings us to chapter 21, which is entitled Lord Krishna's Explanation of the Vedic Path. So here, Krishna says, those who give up these methods for achieving me, which consist of devotional service, instead being moved by material desires, cultivate insignificant sense gratification, certainly undergo the continual cycle of material existence, Krishna says. So those who give up the process of devotional service, then they kshine punne marte lokam vishanti. They go on in the vicious cycle of birth, death, old age, disease, birth, death, old age, disease. So Krishna is saying that the only way to get out of this vicious cycle is if we can engage in devotional service to Krishna. And Krishna says, my dear sinless Uddhava, in order to understand what is proper in life, one must evaluate a given object with its particular category. Thus, in analyzing religious principles, one must consider purity and impurity. Similarly, in one's ordinary dealings, one must distinguish between good and bad. And to ensure one's physical survival, one must recognize what is auspicious and what is inauspicious. So Krishna is saying that for, sometimes we say that, we don't need to know, it's just something superficial. That, it's fine. Whatever it is, it's fine. No, nothing is fine. We need to know what is good and what is bad. Like Srila Prabhupada, one time he was talking to a group of scholars in New Zealand. And those group of scholars, they came to Srila Prabhupada and they said, well, Swamiji, isn't it something good that I help an old lady cross the street? Isn't that a good activity? Srila Prabhupada, he responded by saying, if we do not know what is good, if we do not know what is bad, how can we claim that what we are doing is good? Srila Prabhupada didn't even answer that whether giving help to that old lady crossing the road was good or not. He didn't even answer that. The main thing, Prabhupada just went straight to the root. Prabhupada said that if you do not know what is good and bad, how can you claim to say that you are doing good? That is Prabhupada's point. This is exactly what Krishna is saying. We need to know what is, pious, what is impious, what is good, what is bad, what is auspicious, what is inauspicious. We need to know. Only then we can claim, okay, then what I am doing is auspicious. But if we don't know what is inauspicious and what is auspicious, we may be in some illusion thinking that auspicious is inauspicious or inauspicious is auspicious. So then Krishna is saying that I have revealed this way of life for those bearing the burden of mundane religious principles. Krishna is saying. This is exactly Srila Prabhupada's words. That Srila Prabhupada, he always said that, if you're just talking superficially, nothing, we are not going to get anywhere. But we need to know, what is right and what is wrong. So ordinary religious principles, prescribing innumerable rules, regulations, prohibitions are undoubtedly a great burden for those who are bereft of Krishna consciousness. Like in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, first chapter, in text 11, it is stated, Bhurini bhuri karmani shrotavyani vibhagashaha. That there are countless religious scriptures in the world prescribing countless religious duties. So the authorized scriptures, what do we know? What is actually authorized? So, authorized scriptures are those which are spoken by the Lord himself or by his direct representatives, as stated, here in Srimad Bhagavatam, and even in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the last chapter 18, text 66, Krishna says, Sarvadharman parityaja, mamekam sharanam vraja. That one should give up all kinds of mundane piety and directly take to the loving devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita that what is that devotional service? Krishna says in chapter 9, in text 2, susukham kartum avyayam. Krishna says this, that devotional service means it'll make us happy. It'll result in happiness. It'll result in bliss. So the Bhakti Yoga process, which depends completely on the mercy of the Supreme Lord, it's very joyful and it's very easily performed. Srila Lochan Das Thakur, now we've seen from the Srimad Bhagavatam, we've seen what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. But who came to exemplify these teachings of Krishna in the Bhagavatam, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita? That is none other than Krishna himself in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's the original Bhagavata. A question was recently asked to us that why do we claim that Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu is the first Bhagavata, the first original Bhagavata? Why is he referred to like that? Because, there is Madhavendra Puri or Madhvacharya, these personalities not, Bhagavata? They are Bhagavata, no doubt about it. But Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, as Krishna himself, specifically for this age of Kali Yuga, Mahaprabhu gave what nobody else has given. Madhvacharya or Madhavendra Puri, what none of them have given, Mahaprabhu has given us that treasure. As is sung by Srila Lochan Das Thakur. He says, Parama karuna pahudui jana nitai gaura chandra savayavatar sharashiramani Kevalayananda Kanda Parama Karuna Pahudui Jana Nitai Gaura Chandra. So Nitai Gaura Chandra, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Krishna himself, he came to award us how do we do Sarvadharman Parityaja. while staying, grihe thako, bone thako, shoda hori bole dako. That whether you're living as a householder, whether you're living in the forest as a sannyasi or vanaprasthi, whatever situation you may be in, simply chant Hare Krishna. Shoda hori bole dako. So in this way, rather than becoming burdened, overburdened by doing this ritual, doing that ritual, doing this purification, doing that samskara, this samskara, which we don't even know what kind of result it is going to yield. Doing those many samskaras, maybe we are doing something wrong, then what will happen? We get the opposite reaction. But rather, if we engage in simply following what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught us, just chant and dance in emotional love of God. Take Krishna Prasad. Make your life sublime. This is the word Srila Prabhupada used. Make your life sublime. So sublime means that it is even above peace, it's above happiness, it's above bliss, it is sublime. It's on a different realm altogether. It's like a parallel universe existing. We can live in that other world if we simply follow what Srila Prabhupada has given to us by the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is what Gauranga Mahaprabhu has taught, which Srila Prabhupada has just simplified for all of us in terms of just following the 4 basic regulative principles of no meat eating, no fish, eggs, onion, garlic, no intoxication, no tea, coffee, no gambling, and no illicit sex. Rising early in the morning, offering Mangalarti, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and spending the day entirely in services centered around Krishna. In Krishna consciousness. By sharpening our consciousness, trying to just think and offering everything that we do for the pleasure of Krishna. So this way, when we do this, it is such an easy process. It becomes joyfully performed. Madchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Then we experience this tushyanti cha ramanti cha, the actual bliss we experience when we follow this path that has been given to us by Srila Prabhupada. So text 15 of this chapter, Krishna says, a mantra is purified when it is chanted with proper knowledge. And one's work is purified when it is offered to me. Thus, by purification of the place, time, substance, mantras, and work, one becomes religious. And by negligence of these items, one is considered irreligious. So when we want to become religious, if we are able to follow these guidelines, then we are considered to be religious. Otherwise, we are not religious. Then Krishna directly says that Krishna directly explains, very clearly explains that what is material piety and sin, they're always, relative in their considerations. For example, if a neighbor's house is on fire, and if we make a hole in the roof of that neighbor's house to rescue the trapped residents of that neighbor's family, then this is considered to be a very pious activity. We made a hole. Why? To save the family from the fire. But under normal circumstances, if we just make a hole in someone's roof, then that is considered to be a criminal activity. The activity in itself, the activity is that we are making a hole in the roof of our neighbor's house. At one moment, it is considered to be pious. The next moment, it's considered to be impious. Why? It's based on the conditions. It's based on the reasons why we are doing what we are doing. So this is how it is explained. Just like the knife, when it is in the hand of a doctor, it can save life. But when the same knife is in the hand of a thief, it can take life. So the knife in itself is not good or bad. It's with the intent with what we are using the knife that makes the knife either good or bad. This is what Krishna is trying to explain, that in text 18, Krishna says that by refraining from a particular sinful or materialistic activity, one becomes free from its bondage. Such renunciation is the basis of religious and auspicious life for human beings and drives away suffering, illusion, and fear. So, in this context, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Antya Leela, in chapter 6, verse 220, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is stating, Mahaprabhur Bhaktaganero Boiragya Pradhan Jaha Dekhi Pritahan Gaurav Bhagavan. Renunciation is the basic principle sustaining the lives of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu's devotees. And seeing this renunciation, Gauranga Mahaprabhu, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is extremely satisfied. Jahadeki Pritohan. Mahaprabhu is extremely pleased when he sees this kind of renunciation. Now, what does Mahaprabhu mean by this renunciation? He's saying Vairagya Pradhan. Vairagya means renunciation. But does Mahaprabhu mean here that everyone thus should become a renunciant, a sannyasi? No. What Mahaprabhu means is the mentality of enjoying, Vairagya. What is the opposite of Vairagya? It's a bhogi. Means one who just wants to enjoy for oneself. So that kind of mentality is what we must renounce. When we are utilizing all of our, possessions in the service of Krishna, in the service of our Guru Maharaj, in the preaching mission of the Lord, then that is renunciation. That is the teachings of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. When we are, when we are cultivating the mood that nothing actually belongs to me. The proprietor, this house where we are living, this is not our house. This house belongs to our spiritual master. This house is actually belonging to Krishna. This is nothing but a preaching center. When we are having this kind of mentality, that this is not our house, this is not our property, this is the property of my spiritual master. And that is called renunciation. That is the mood of renunciation. So, the mood is that nothing actually belongs to me. Even I don't belong to myself. What to speak of anything else? What to speak of any other person? Or what to speak of any other possession? The only thing that belongs to me is Krishna, is service to our spiritual master. That's the only thing that belongs to us. So this is when we think that, yes, this property, all this possession is actually the property of my spiritual master. It is actually the property of Krishna, and it is meant to be enjoyed by them. It is meant to be used in service to them. Then that is the mood of, this is the Vairagya that Mahaprabhu is talking about. This is the renunciation that Mahaprabhu is talking about. So Krishna goes on to explain that one who accepts material sense objects as desirable certainly becomes attached to them. From such attachment, lust arises, and this lust creates quarrel among men. Text 20, when from quarrel arises intolerable anger, followed by the darkness of ignorance. This ignorance quickly overtakes a man's broad intelligence. Text 21, O saintly Uddhava, a person bereft of real intelligence is considered to have lost everything. Deviated from the actual purpose of his life, he becomes dull, just like a dead person. This sounds so familiar, these three verses. 19, 20, and 21. These verses are very similar to what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, text 62 and 63. In text 62, Krishna says, Dhyayeto vishayan pumsa sangasteshu bhajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho bhijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. Text 63. Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibrama, smriti bhamshat buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati. From anger, delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. Exact same, you know, not exact language, but exact same words are used. And over 3 verses in the Uddhava Gita and 2 verses in the Bhagavad Gita, same message. From this objects of the senses, one develops attachment to them. From such attachment, lust comes. The dissatisfaction of lust produces anger. And when anger is there, bewilderment of memory. When bewilderment of memory comes, intelligence is lost. Intelligence is lost, one falls down again. And Krishna says, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that one falls down into the material pool. But in the Uddhava Gita, Krishna says he becomes dull, just like a dead person. This is what happens to a person whose desires are not satisfied. They just become dead, they just hanker so much. Then Krishna goes on to explain the transcendental sound of the Vedas is very difficult to comprehend and manifests on different levels within the prana, the senses, and the mind. This Vedic sound is unlimited, very deep, and unfathomable, just like the ocean. So then, here, whenever we read this, I always get reminded. In the early days of our marriage, my Prabhu would tell me that he had a friend, who came to Prabhu and said that yes, he knew that Prabhu was a devotee, and he would approach Prabhu, and Prabhu would sometimes read the Gita in his work. So he would say, "Oh, you're reading the Gita? It's just part of the Vedas. It's part of the Mahabharata. I've read all the Vedas. I've read everything." So then Prabhu said, "Okay, you have read everything. What is your conclusion?" So then this man said, "Yes, I've read the Vedas, and my conclusion is there's no God. God does not exist." It's so funny. So after reading everything, this is the conclusion, that there is no God. This is what happens. Because this is why Krishna is saying the transcendental sound of the Vedas is very difficult to comprehend for a materialistic person, unless one surrenders to a spiritual master who can teach the actual import of the Vedic understanding. So Krishna says in the final concluding verse of this chapter, Krishna says that I am the ritualistic sacrifice enjoined by the Vedas, and I am the worshipable deity. It is I who am presented as various philosophical hypotheses, and it is I alone who am then refuted by philosophical analysis. When I was reading this particular statement by Krishna, I got reminded by a very beautiful pastime of Srila Prabhupada. Well, we've not yet finished the translation. It's just midway, but I'll just say this pastime because it's in connection to this. So one time Srila Prabhupada, he was traveling in the flight, and to his servant, Srila Prabhupada said, "Okay, I will pose as a Mayavadi, as a scholar of Mayavad philosophy, and you be a devotee, and you convince me that why I should become a devotee." So then, this devotee who was, Srila Prabhupada then started training. So then this devotee started giving many, many arguments. But Prabhupada, as a Mayavadi scholar, was defeating each and every one of those, tenets. And then the next time, the Prabhupada said, "Okay, now we will exchange our roles. Now you be the Mayavad philosophy and I will be the devotee." So then this devotee said, "Now I know all the points. I can also defeat Prabhupada, just the way Prabhupada defeated me." But then even as the devotee, and first as the Mayavad scholar, Prabhupada was able to defeat at both times. So you see, the Vedic scriptures, it can be used in this way very expertly, those who are expert. That's why Krishna is saying that it is I who am then refuted by philosophical analysis also. So, if we want, we can use the Vedas. Experts like Srila Prabhupada can use the Vedas in refuting the supremacy of Krishna also. But then we need to know what is the actual conclusion of the Vedas. We need to know that. So that's why Krishna is saying here, the transcendental sound vibration thus establishes me as the essential meaning of Vedic knowledge. So what is the essential meaning of the Vedic knowledge? Is that the transcendental sound vibration that establishes me as the essence of everything. So the Vedas, elaborately analyzing all material duality as nothing but my illusory potency, ultimately completely negate this duality and achieve me, and I am the purpose of all the Vedas. This is Krishna's conclusion. Just like in chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedeshcha sarverahamevya vedyo vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of all the Vedanta, and I am the knower of all the Vedas. So, this is the conclusion for today's session. We hope that you enjoyed today's session. And if you have any questions, comments, or reflection, please share that with us. We'll try to answer them to the best of our capacity. So before we take any questions, here's our quiz session for today. We have 6 questions. The first one, what does Krishna recommend if we are not able to render pure devotional service? Second, where will the devotees go if we are performing bhakti and are still attached to pleasures of the material world? Third, what is pure devotional service in regards to our desires? Fourth, what happens to those who give up the process of devotional service? Fifth, what is real renunciation? Sixth, what causes quarrel among men? So these are the 6 questions for the quiz session for today. If there's any questions, we can take that now. We again thank all of our devotees for their participation and for your beautiful comments. So thank you all so very much. We look forward to eagerly seeing all of you again in our next session. Thank you all so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Iskon Vartaman Guru Vrind ki jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Sitanat Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.